Salutations Friends! My name is Eveline, and for the past couple of years I have been blossoming into the vintage person that you see today. Style-wise, anyway. Vintage style, not vintage values. But before I got interested in the elegant silhouettes and colors and fanciness of the 40s and 50s, I was into something a little less fancy. That's right. This used to be this. Now this phase, if you want to call it that, started when I was about 15, my sophomore year of high school, and went all the way up until I started getting into vintage, pretty much. Of course, it wasn't always perfect. I started out with this, like, you're kind of edgy emo kid who was angry for no reason, upset for no reason, sad for no reason, and by no reason I mean I was a teenager and hormonal, and I had an anxiety disorder, and so I had reason. It's just whatever. And slowly I sort of developed from that edgy emo kid into a more classic punk style by the time I dropped out of college. Beauty school dropout. Which brings us to this video. I thought it would be a neat little experiment type thing to sort of revert back into that and see how I like it now, since it's been a while since I've fully committed to dressing like that. And I don't know, for some reason the sort of mentality lately of the world being on fire has got me feeling a little punk-ish, you know? Is there someone in my house? It was just my mom. I'm a bit more done up than I have been. I usually just kind of do this for videos nowadays, considering I'm just sitting in my house alone most of my time. But this is generally the kind of aesthetic that I try to achieve. Very cozy, warm, neutral colors, very vintage, the red lip, somewhere between 1940s and 1950s. I've done a bit of a classic 50s page boy today. Very neutral eyes, very soft, very warm, and very just overall neutral is what I would describe myself as. And my makeup is either non-existent or very much this. This is pretty much what I go for. And I just wanted to give y'all this sort of version of me, my nowadays, everyday kind of look, before we get into the whole punk thing. So here it is. Take a good look. This is me before I go all hardcore on you. And the plan is just to sort of build on top of this. But before we start the transformation, I'm going to have to change into something a little more appropriate and remove this lipstick, because I'm trying to go for a very stark contrast. The red lip would be perfectly fine with an alternative look, but that's not really what I want today. So let's run over our style options. So I've sort of downsized on my alternative style pieces that I have. Obviously it's not my style anymore, but I have such like lovely memories attached to it that I can't really get rid of it, and I feel like if I get rid of it, I'm gonna want to dress up again in whatever. I'm very like back and forth with my style and fashion choices. Most days I'm like want to be very classy and naturey, like fancy 40s, sort of hippie-esque, like cottagecore kind of style, but every once in a while I get the urge to kind of just like, you know, I just want to be, I just want to look like cool and edgy again, you know? So I do have something. The first thing I have is this fishnet bodysuit that I am for sure going to be using because I don't get to wear it as often as I want to wear it. I've got this t-shirt that has been sort of a staple for the last like 8 years of my life that I cut up. It's got like a cool skeleton-y thing in the back. I've got this little faux leather bodysuit that I got from Forever 21 before I decided that I wanted to try to be sustainable in my fashion. And then I have this, which is one of my favorite pieces in my entire wardrobe, even though I don't wear it very often. Here we have your classic studded vest. I don't know if this one's gonna make an appearance today, but it's here. And as you might be able to see, the problem with all of this is that I don't have any bottoms. I do have a couple pairs, leftover pairs of black jeans, but they're not high-waisted and I can't really style these with them. Usually I style any of this stuff with just a black skirt, but we're trying to avoid the vintagey, cutesy stuff today, so I went ahead and I made myself some pants. About a year ago, I found this skirt in a local thrift store, and immediately I was like, those are my pants. So the skirt has been sitting in my closet for a year now, just waiting to be turned into pants, and guess what? I finally did it. And the best part is I filmed it. So if you want to see how I made these out of an old skirt, stay tuned for next week's video, because so I'm gonna go ahead, sort through my outfits, figure it out, and take off the red lipstick, and I'll be right back. Alright, we are at a bit of a different angle. My lips look, I'll fix it, just ignore it for now. I'm not super sure about my choice. I'll probably change it up. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. I think I'm gonna go ahead and start with sort of fixing the face, and while I do that, I'm gonna talk to you about punks. Now, when I dressed like this and was very interested in this sort of style, I was never super boisterous about it. I never really was one of those who was like loud and out on the streets and the establishment kind of deal, you know? I was very, well, I have an anxiety disorder, so I was very quiet, and I was mostly into it because of the fashion, which is like how most things start. I was and am still very much into the punk fashion of the 80s and the 70s. I love it. I love the aesthetics of it all. It just, the sort of grungy, messy rawness of it all very much appeals to me, and that was sort of the point of it, was for it to be raw and sort of unfiltered and whatnot. It was very much a sort of FU to the societal standard of perfection in the household, and punk came out of the sort of white suburban home where the teenagers and stuff were just so sick of the perfection of it all. At the time, you were kind of expected to be perfect, and the parents expected you to be perfect, and it kind of pushed aside and hid the sort of nasty underbelly of society and covered up all of the things that nobody wanted you to see. The government didn't want you to see, your parents didn't want you to see. They sort of just wanted everybody to ignore it, which is sort of how society has been forever. Nobody wants you to see the dirty, nasty things that people do, and so they kind of brush over it with this vision of perfection. And the kids were sick of it because they could see it. They could see the nastiness, the underbelly, especially in big cities where the sort of underground scene started. They could see, they were out and about every day. They saw all the dirtiness and the unkeptness of the sort of hidden part of America where people weren't being treated right and bad things were happening, and they were sick of it being hidden away. They wanted to speak out about it, and they were pissed off about it, and from that stemmed the punk rock movement. It felt fitting sort of talking about this kind of stuff in this video. All things considered with what's going on, there's sort of this new rise up against society and the government and angry citizens who see all the terrible things that the system does to people, and they're sick of it. They want it to change, and it's very similar, and so I thought it'd be sort of appropriate to kind of talk about this history of something that I am very interested and very passionate about, which is punk rock. There's just so much that came out of punk rock that without it we wouldn't have today. Not only from the fashion, but from like music. Without the foundations laid down by the Talking Heads, Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, the Sex Pistols, we wouldn't have a lot of music that we have today. So many subgenres of music have come because of punk rock. You have grunge, hardcore, emo, goth, pop punk, even metal from like the last 30 years is sort of a 50-50 split of screaming, singing guitars of the rock and roll from the 70s and 80s, mixed perfectly with just the unkempt, unstructured, angry sounds of punk rock. We wouldn't have that if it wasn't for punk rock. So many of my favorite bands are built on top of the foundation that the punk rock movement laid down. And again, it opened doors to look at the less appealing, messier side of society. It didn't try to hide what it was, it didn't try to hide anything, and I think that's where it sort of opened a lot of doors and opportunity for a lot of people whose voices otherwise would not have been heard. And it shifted the way that music was made and listened to. With punk rock, you didn't need to know how to read music. You didn't need to have a good singing voice. All you needed was some secondhand instruments and a fire in your eyes. And people listened. It's just everybody was just fed up with what society was feeding them. Punk was pissed off, and it was gonna let you know. It was ready to scream and fight and bite and spit until it was heard. I mean, music historically has always been used as a way to point out the things that society gets wrong, and this was no different. Also, just their fashion was f***ing wild, and I love it. Yeah, at the beginning I called this a phase, sure, but in my heart and soul, I still love it, and I adore it, and I still feel very strongly about it. The things that it did, the things that it gave us is incredible. We're back, fully charged battery. We're good to go. I don't quite remember where I was at, but I think I was talking about how much I love the punk fashion, and I still love it. Anyway, outside of the whole music and fashion thing, there are some things I wanted to talk about because I think the whole idea of like the establishment is pretty appropriate right now, all things considered. Sure, 40 years ago it was easy to sort of ignore all of the terrible things that our government and law enforcement does, but not anymore. In today's age where everyone has a camera and everyone has a voice on social media, they can't really hide their corruption from us the way they did back when all we had to rely on was newspapers and news channels who could tell us their sort of twisted version of the stories that were happening. Today, we get to see what they do. We get to see all of what they do. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We don't have to depend on secondhand reports that can be easily twisted in the favor of the government and the cops and whatnot. We can see first-hand accounts from the people who these things are actually happening to as they're happening. And those accounts are everywhere. All of your feeds, all of your pages, all of your whatever. And you can't really ignore what's happening anymore. And I think that's great, because that means that they can't hide it from us anymore. We have to confront the inherent wrongness of our society. And I'm hopeful that that's going to mean that we actually see some change. Because sure, we've protested and rioted against this kind of stuff before in the past, but for whatever change there was, it was definitely not a significant amount. I'm hopeful that because we live now constantly being fed real world shit and everything that's happening, that it will open up the sympathetic hearts in the people who don't normally get to see that, or the people who don't have to deal with that. So yeah, to all of the black people who have had to live every day under the hand of white comfort, I will never know what it feels like to go through what you have gone through and what you continue to go through to this day. And I am sorry for my ancestry and the way that my race has treated you and still treats you. And I hope to God that you get the change that you need. And to all of my fellow white people, I just ask that you use your privilege and use your whiteness to protect and defend your black friends and family from the violence and hatred of those who are trying to keep them quiet. And remember, there's no hiding your action when the entire world has cameras in their pockets. So if we can keep ourselves non-violent as long as we can and as much as we can, the police and government are going to just expose themselves. And before I get anybody coming in here saying, well, not all cops are bad. I know. I never said they were. Obviously, not all cops are bad. Just like, not all white people are bad. But there are still bad apples. And the police system is built on corruption. This whole country was built on racism and slavery. And therefore, it is inherently corrupt. Sure, the fact that that corruption still lingers to this day is shocking and unnerving, but just because something is hard to believe doesn't mean it's not true. Alright, so here's the final transformation. Let's get a quick before and after shot going on in here. Yeah, I'm really happy with how it came out. It kind of feels nice to be back in my old skin for a second. But I think I might stick with the vintagey style from for now. I still love this style. I think I'll always love this style. I honestly don't think it's a phase. It's just a little over the top extravagant in a way that people don't always necessarily like, but I do. I love it. I think I'm just always gonna be sort of over the top extravagant, whether it be like this or with my vintage. Like, both fashions are very funky and take a lot of effort, and I don't know. That's gonna be it for me today. I hope you enjoyed seeing my transformation. Once more, here's my before and after. Like, this is my outside personality, and this is my inside personality. Again, if you want to see how I made these pants, these amazing high-waisted tartan pants, stay tuned for next Thursday's video. And if you like this video, be sure to click that like button. And if you're interested in seeing more of me in my normal vintage style, feel free to subscribe. I'd love to have you. I upload every Tuesday and Thursday, and just know that everybody is welcome here. I don't care who you are, I don't care what you are, as long as you're not an asshole. I'll see you next Tuesday with another vlog, and that's it. Make sure you wash your hands and remember to wear your mask. The protesting is great, but we're still in a pandemic, so make sure you take the proper precautions to keep you and others around you safe. And that's it. F the man, and goodbye. There's a fly in here that's just flying into my mirror over and over again. That's why he's gonna fucking make me lose it. Dang it, it's back! Aha! It's your problem now. The fly is gone. Liberty spikes are atrocious. They're hideous. They don't look good on anybody. They're hard to do. I don't know why they exist, but I'm glad they do, because Liberty spikes are my 100% absolute favorite hairstyle in the history of ever. Honestly, if it didn't take forever and kill your arms to do them, my hair would be in Liberty spikes every day. I don't care. One day I will put my hair in spikes, but not today because I don't have 6 hours to film this video.